Well, OCO, Totally 2. This is the 7th Amendment Hour from our home base.
It's good to be back. Unfortunately, our regular producer's feeling a little under the weather. We don't want to leave you guys without time with us. We don't want to be off the air too long. So here we are.
So we're operating out of the office for the Nevada Republic Common Law Private Members Association right now. As you can see, we have my tribal flag behind me, the Cherokees. And we'll do different positions as we go around here, as we tape stuff. But Mike would like to make a little comment. Oh, by the way, I'm Gary Bergman, one of your teachers. This is my co-teacher.
Michael Runion, the co-teacher.
We are happy to have you.
So one of the things that is a little bit of an advantage to us when we're not on the air here with our usual 98.1 FM, since we're web only, we can actually take sponsorships at this point. So if you want your business shouted out, put a little commercial in here, we'd be happy to have you. We're looking for your support to help keep us on the air and, help us make our situation a little better here.
And we can't very well do call-ins right now or have people call in because, we're recording this and it's going to go to YouTube and the Twitter account. So maybe Facebook. I don't know if you figured that out yet.
No, we don't have our Facebook working just yet. That's run by our regular producer, and like I said, he's a little under the weather.
So if you want to find us, you go to 98.1 Trump Freedom Radio on YouTube.
Yep, absolutely. I've managed that account. I'll respond directly to you.
So go to YouTube, put in the search machine, 98.1 Trump Freedom Radio. And is that basically the same for Twitter too?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you'll be able to get our shows, this one and our past. And this is how we're going to start doing this. In fact, we might, since this COVID-19 nonsense and the school situation, we highly recommend that you start letting your children watch these shows or yourself and get a little education. And while you're on YouTube, you might go to some other sites that are very informative and start educating yourself. Get the real education. Don't get the brainwashing that's being done in the schools now.
Absolutely. You have the opportunity now to control your child's education much more directly than you did before. You have an opportunity to, impart to them the real truth, not the spoon-fed truth.
Yes, it's like the contrails versus chemtrails. We're going to tell you the truth about that. And that chemtrails is done globally. In fact, once you see it, you can spot it on TV, ads, old movies and all that. You can see the configurations. In fact, in the South Valley today, on Wednesday, the 12th, we had a different formation coming across of chemtrails. Right now, I'm getting from my other sources over there in Texas right now that they're hitting us with radiation pretty heavy late at night. He's saying around 2:30, 3 o'clock they're bombarding. And this person's able to know this stuff very, very well, what's going on. And remember, if the news tells you we're having high clouds, that's their sign telling you we're going to get chemtrails.
Exactly.
So, welcome back once again to the 7th Amendment Hour, and we are going to be covering the 13 lawful amendments. Now, but what we're concentrating on is the original 13th. Now, these 13 amendments were before the War of Aggression, committed against the sovereign Confederate States of America, and that's what we are. If you look at the Articles of Confederation, we're the States of America united within the Confederation. So,
exactly. We're, the Articles of Confederation never lapsed. They were never there's no mechanism within them to have them be superseded. You can amend them, and the current Constitution, the Constitution prior to 1861, effectively amends the Articles of Confederation. It adds a few clarifications to it, but the original articles are still in force.
So the Constitution since 1789 had been nothing but corporate constitutions for bankruptcy. There's been 4 constitutions. I think we're working on the 5th one because they all have to do with bankruptcy, international bankruptcy.
Absolutely. They are bankruptcy contracts.
Yeah, it's the corporation bankruptcy, not the American Republic, because we're not involved in that. Actually, right now, we don't have a lawful government. We had corporations.
That lawful government went into effective hiatus when on March 27th, 1861, the Lincoln administration dismissed the lawful legislature. And at that point, there was no longer a quorum because the South refused to attend. And without a quorum, you cannot be a lawful legislature. And what he called back into force after that.
Another thing he forgot, they didn't set a date to reconvene.
Correct. They did not set a reconvene date.
So international law steps in, says you're no longer a government. Wipe this out. That's why they became the United States of America Incorporated, a British corporation. And that's what we've been. Corporations in different variations. Right now, we're the United States, all in capital, corporation from Edinburgh, Scotland.
Absolutely. So with that, let's take a momentary pause for the cause right now, and we'll be right back with you. Now, click all this up here.
You need a mouse?
All right, welcome back. Thank you for hanging with us there through that little pause for the cause. So we're going to finish up here with the core understanding of the lawful 13th Amendment.
The original.
The original, the one that was actually ratified March 12th, 1819, and not the 13th Amendment you were lied to about in school.
That was ratified 1865.
Exactly.
Under martial law.
Under martial law without a lawful Congress, so that you cannot create a new amendment while you're without a lawful government.
Remember, what we have now in government, the Congress and Senate, is an executive positions, not legislative position.
Exactly. They were put in by the executive branch under the Lincoln administration.
Under martial law. Lincoln was the CEO, just like Trump is the CEO of a foreign corporation.
Exactly.
Headquartered in a foreign enclave known as the District of Columbia. Not part of the States of America United.
Exactly. So many of the original documents with this 13th Amendment were destroyed conveniently when the English burnt down the White House during the War of 1812. And ever since then, the powers that are impacted by this amendment have worked tirelessly to scrub every source they can find. They pulled it out of schools. They've been destroying documents. And the document we have is gleaned from the Colorado and Wyoming drafts of the document. Sadly, this means we're working with some imperfect copies, but they are not the original ratified documents with the original signatures. But they do mention that this was ratified back in 1819. So the original amendment, it has a total of 20 sections, and it's set up to clarify a lot of what happened beforehand.
The corporate amendment only has 2 sections.
Correct. And both of those are, frankly, not so great.
So, in fact, first, before we get going, I want to show you something here. You see, we put the flag up there this time. Yep. Let me get my hand in right. Flag
there you
up.
go.
But let me show you our little mouse. Yep. People don't think the civil flag exists, but it exists a lot of different places.
And there's a lot of good people out there who truly believe in our, peacetime, legitimate government. I'd like to thank Miss Mary, for example, over there at what's the name of her business? Sunseekers.
50 Emory Street, private mailbox.
Absolutely, she has our literature over there. She has our drafts of our shows, so you can kind of look at our transcript and the things we work from.
Yes, we're starting to leave transcripts there for you to read if you missed a show, so you have something to go by. She has other literature. You'll see the civil flag. You'll see the Nevada Republic banner. You'll see the common law private membership banner.
Absolutely.
So, and she has good used books. If you're looking for good used paperbacks to read, step in there. She has all office supplies. In fact, I keep her supplied with civil flags if you want a 3x5 flag to fly. Absolutely. If you don't feel like ordering one, I keep 1 or 2 down there. And she runs out, and I restock her.
Yep. So, all right. So let's talk about these sections in the original 13th Amendment. The original 13th was designed to set right all the wrongs that were observed in the young nation in one fell swoop. It was intended as kind of a panacea to correct all the little nagging errors in the Articles of Confederation. As an amendment, that's what it's for. And the fact that the amendment was ratified speaks for the need of the reform of this early government. And frankly, the wrongs addressed in the document would set right the issues that currently plague our corporate government. So let's take a reminder here.
So the Corporate Constitution's 13th Amendment, ratified by the corporate franchise states in 1865. This corporate 13th Amendment has only 2 sections and applies to the corporate 14th Amendment. United States corporate citizens only. So remember, when you call yourself a U.S. citizen, you're saying you're a corporate citizen under the 14th Amendment, under martial law.
Exactly. Property of the federal government.
That's right. And the original lawful 13th Amendment, if any American, state, national, shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title, nobility, or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument. It's a salary or fee of any kind, whatever. And I think we read that list of some military and presidents that received things.
Last time we had a show on, we talked about a lot of people who have received knighthoods and various things from the British Empire.
And the French. And one was also received another medal from the Germans.
Sure.
From any emperor, king, queen, prince, or foreign power. Such person shall cease to be a citizen of their sovereign state republic. That's what we are. We're independent sovereign state republics united within a confederation. That makes up the States of America united. Within a confederation shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them.
So, like I said, we discussed last time, this alone, this portion of the amendment is enough to make a lot of people in power shaking their boots. They make a living off of these foreign gifts and emoluments and speaking deals. They crave the separation a title grants them, the pomp and circumstance of being an OBE or Order of the Garter or, various different knighthoods. And this also, as we noted last time, would exclude any lawyer that takes the title Esquire.
Yeah, look up what Esquire means. It's a knighthood under knights. It's the next position down from knighthood. So it's a noble title.
Exactly, and it would prevent them from serving in the government. And to be honest, getting rid of the lawyers would simplify a lot of the laws that are imposed on the people.
So when you go talk to an attorney or a lawyer and he has Esquire on his card, give it back to him and walk out. You want a barrister, actually, what you want.
Absolutely. So let's move on from that. There's Section 1.
All persons shall have the right peaceably to assemble and worship God according to the dictates of their own conscience.
So, honestly, this sounds a lot like a repeat of the First Amendment, but it seeks to clarify the crucial enumeration of the right of conscience, which we talked about when we covered the First Amendment, and particularly in this case in religious matters. And there was good reason for this, as several states have set up roadblocks against particular faiths or even a lack of faiths from holding office or from testifying in court. So this seeks to clarify that you can't do that. This prohibits the states from doing that. And in the current corporate government, I believe there is still 11 states out there that effectively have religious tests for holding office or for testifying in court. So this...
And keep in mind, we're teachers by the right of the Creator. He's the one that assigned us this position. So we work on his behalf.
Absolutely. I don't claim to speak for him. I'm, as fallible as the next guy. I'm not the Catholic Pope there speaking ex cathedra from the chair, which makes him, quote, infallible and speaking directly for God. I'm not that, I'm a lens. I kind of focus that word coming through me.
And I had my medium I've had for years, my second one. The first one passed on, but August 8th was the second anniversary of my mother's passing. She crossed over to the spiritual world. And I had my reading, and some things are going to be coming here pretty soon. And we're supposed to have some good messages in September, the second or third week of September. But there's some other things coming on, so keep tuned, and we'll tell you what we hear.
Absolutely.
So Section 2, the use of public press shall not be obstructed, but criminal publications made in one state against the lawful institutions of another state shall not be allowed.
So again, we're seeing a clarification of the First Amendment. We've always recognized limitations on the press. The freedom of the press doesn't mean an unlimited press. Deliberately printing falsehoods, libel, and slander, are criminal offenses. You have to print the truth. Simple as that. We don't see that currently in the government-controlled media. We see what we're told we're supposed to see. And actually, they recently legalized the wholesale distribution of propaganda by the media. So a criminal publication in this sense would be a publication that knowingly publishes falsehoods to cause injury to the institutions of another state. I think that's, pretty clear. It's not a bad idea, Print what's true.
That's right. Truth is the truth.
Exactly, and it shall set you free.
That's right. So Section 3. The right of citizens to be free and lawful speech in public assemblies shall not be denied. Access of citizens to the ballot box shall not be obstructed, either by civil or military power. Now, it seems like we're having a problem with that right now.
Well, absolutely. We're definitely seeing a problem with that right now. But that is intentional.
Oh, yes. Your vote don't count anyway.
It doesn't matter anyway.
It's all controlled by martial law and their corporation.
I hate to quote, communist dictators, but one of the things Stalin came up with is the person who casts the votes doesn't count. The person who counts the vote counts.
That's right. And keep in mind, President Woodrow Wilson was the father of Soviet Russia. If it wasn't him, for him, there wouldn't be a Soviet Russia.
Oh, exactly. The importation of Vladimir Lenin from France into Russia was...
He made a special agreement with war-torn Germany at the time, a special arrangement to have them on a special train over to Russia, and had $20 million in gold that we supplied. And then we turned around and reneged on the agreement and slaughtered the Germans.
Absolutely. It was terrible.
So the military shall always be subordinate to the existing judicial authority over citizens. The privilege of the habeas corpus shall never be suspended in the presence of the judicial authority. So you retirees, you took an oath to uphold the Constitution. That oath is still good today. And that flag behind me represents the constitutional civil government.
Absolutely.
That's what your oath is to. That's the flag you put above your military flag. You don't put the war battle flag above there. You're endorsing martial law, dictatorship.
The very thing that most of you signed up or were drafted to try to help fight, or were told that you were helping to fight.
And you never were told you was fighting for a foreign corporation, because every armed force division is a corporation, a franchise of the United States Corporation, which is out of Scotland. You are working for the Queen. You're professional soldiers, mercenaries.
So like I said earlier, this document seeks to correct the flaws in the original Articles of Confederation and the Constitution that amended it.
Articles of Freedom.
Articles of Freedom, there we go. As well as illuminate the existing codification of natural rights. So this section adds the ballot box to the list of rights of conscience, and guarantees as well, it reflects the ongoing struggle that existed at this time and continues to exist with the standing military and the civil government. And seeks to clarify the military shall not in any case be used as a policing force in place of, guess what, the militia and the constitutional sheriff, the posse comitatus, us, the people's force. It also enumerates here the critical right of habeas corpus, which, if you know your history, was later trampled upon by the Lincoln administration and the Roosevelt administration and every administration since Lincoln. Makes it perfectly clear that there's no circumstance this critical element of jurisprudence can ever, even under duration and dedication of emergency, be stripped from the citizen. We'll pause here to make sure that the legalese is properly addressed. So, what is habeas corpus? And I'm having a little problem with my mouse here, so we're going to figure that out while we... There we go. I don't want to, tell you the wrong thing. It's Latin for you have the body. It's a writ, court order, which directs law enforcement officials, prison administration, police, sheriff, etc., who have custody of a prisoner to appear in court with the prisoner to help the judge determine whether the prisoner is lawfully in prison or jail. This writ is obtained by petition to a judge in the county or district where the prisoner is incarcerated, and the judge sets a hearing on whether there's legal basis to hold the prisoner. Habeas corpus is a protection against illegal confinement, political prisoners, that type of thing, such as a person holding a person without charges, when due process has been denied, when bail is excessive, when parole has been granted but the accused has been properly not released from prison, or has been improperly surrendered to the bail bondsman or probation, and has been summarily terminated without cause. Historically, this is called the Great Writ. The renowned scholar of the common law, William Blackstone, called this the most celebrated writ in the English common law. It may also be used as a means to contest child custody and deportation proceedings in the court. The writ of habeas corpus can be employed as procedurally in federal district courts to challenge the constitutionality of a state court conviction. All of that comes out of both Black's Law Dictionary, great piece of work.
Everybody needs to have one.
Need to have one to understand the legalese.
I have the 6th edition and 4th.
And the interpretation of a couple of different lawyers there. So habeas corpus is a critical thing, and the Lincoln administration tossed it out with the bathwater.
The biggest violator was Lincoln.
Absolutely. He came out and said that it was in suspension when they sued to try to get his name escapes me off the top of my head, but a publisher released from prison.
Oh, yeah, I know, but I don't remember his name either. I know who you're talking about. He was left in prison for a long time.
Absolutely, without charge.
That's right.
So
because he spoke out against Lincoln.
Absolutely.
Well, just like the publishers that printed in 1862 about the parade in Richmond, Virginia, of the colored troops, Confederate troops.
Right.
But their colored officers paraded down through Richmond and were celebrated by the population of the South, and the publishers. So why is everybody out supporting their colored soldiers and officers?
Right.
Why are we going to war with them?
You know, again, the use of the word colored here is specifically the technicality of the time period.
That's right.
And you got to remember that the northern aggressive states, it took them until 1864 to even employ any colored troops, and they were employed as ditch diggers up until the Massachusetts regiment under Robert Gould Shaw,
the
54th, and they weren't even under colored officers. They were under, under white people. So, and the colored regiments have been buried in history because they don't fit the narrative.
And I like to stress this, that two commanders of the Sons of the Confederacy have been black people, black men. 6 colored soldiers received the Confederate Medal of Honor. So stop to think. Remember, the Confederacy was the true republic.
Right, they remained the lawful government. They still retained themselves underneath the Articles of Confederation.
That's right. That's why they called themselves the Confederacy. So Section 4, the militia of a sovereign state or of the states of America shall not be employed to invade the lawful rights of the people of any of the several sovereign states united. But the states of America united shall not be hereby deprived of the right and power to defend and protect its property and rights within the limits of any of the sovereign states united.
So this section here clearly violated by the Lincoln administration as they sent the armies of the North to, the militias of the North to invade the southern states, to take aggression against states within, that theoretically should still have been within the various states, the several states united. So it also arises from the early use of militia to put down tax rebellions that occurred in the early years of the Republic.
The whiskey tax.
The whiskey tax. And what they did is they brought in militia from outside the state because, your neighbors certainly aren't going to go marching onto your still and try to kill you. They're your neighbors. But you draw somebody from another state, they don't know you from Adam, so they don't care. Now, there were indeed instances where the militia of one state was used to invade and address the rebellions within the borders of another without the permission of the invaded state. And this section also allows for limited federal government the power to protect its own assets, and not strip the assets of any of the several states by the use of military power.
Well, let me speak about that since we're talking about the militia from different states.
Absolutely.
There's a special treaty made up between Canada and the United States, and I forgot the proper name, but people don't know about this. If there's uprising in Canada, American troops be used to put down that uprising. If there's an uprising in the United States, Canadian troops be brought in to put down the uprising. That's how that treaty was written up.
Right, and it's written up exactly for the reason I just mentioned.
That's right.
You're not going to go and impose by force of arms on your neighbor, but on a stranger you have much less, far fewer reservations. So we're going to move on to the next section here, and we need to make sure we judge the next sections the time that they were created, rather than superimpose our modern understanding and righteous revulsion to slavery. Because remember that the Bible has entire sections dedicated to who can and cannot be enslaved and the treatment of those slaves. Slavery was legal in the Republic as well as around the world at this time. So even the original Articles of Confederation, the Federal Constitution, includes sections with regard to slavery. And they legalized it, they legitimized it. And there were many compromise deals designed to keep a balance between the several states and to preserve the Union, the states united. And we can clearly see these in the following text as well. Clearly, in the interest of justice, there would need to be a modification to these sections at some point, but since we haven't had a lawful government to do so since 1861, it's impossible. So we're left with the text as it is historical. So we'll continue to analyze it, talk about it as it is.
So we have Section 5. Persons held to service or labor for life in any sovereign state united under the laws thereof may be taken into any territory of the sovereign states united, south of north latitude 36 degrees, 30, is it stand for feet?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Well, that's the wrong symbol. And the right to such service or labor shall make all needful rules and regulations for the protection of such right and also for the protection of such persons. But Congress or any territory legislative shall not have power to impair or abolish such right of service in the said territory while in a territorial condition without the consent of all the sovereign states south of said latitude which maintain such service.
So we can see this section through the lens of the less populous southern states, demanding protection from unilateral action from the more populous northern states. And we see that line being driven across as the various states are brought into the Union. And the territories south of that were to retain the legality of servitude for life. We see in the several sections of the Articles of Confederation and the Federal Constitution. We see this compromise. We see this in the Electoral College and with the 3/5 representation rules. The framers were desperately trying to balance the power of the several states and the federal government because they wanted each of the sovereign states to have an equal share, an equal say, and to prevent what we have now, where 2 or 3 states dominate the political landscape to the detriment of the remaining states and territories. We can see California and New York, the 2 most populous states, effectively dominating the presidential elections and effectively dominating policy that goes with it.
So we have Section 6. Involuntary servitude, except for crime, shall not be permanently established within the district set apart from the seat of government of the States of America United, but the right of
sojourn. It's the
right of dwell in a place temporarily. That's what it means. It's the legalese. In such district, with persons held to service or labor for life, shall not be denied.
So this section codifies the right to travel unmolested with one's, and I hate to use the term for people in this case, but it is proper for the time, property. And that's the correct term we're looking at again through the eyes of the 19th century reality. And the right to sojourn is a long-established common law principle that would simplify and make great many things if it was applied to the present system. Like, for example, there's the right to wander within the common law, where, as long as you're traveling, you can pass through well-established areas without, having to pay a fee or being harmed by the people there. And what this intention was, at least in my opinion, is to make sure that the representatives from the various southern states, when called to participate in the legislature, were not subject to arrest for having their servant there with them and being able to travel in the way that they are normally allowed to do so. And we can see this, another great part of this, being able to travel from one state to another with property that theoretically isn't allowed in the state. And that would simplify things greatly. For example, like if you're traveling from, say, New Jersey to Connecticut, you have to pass through the state of New York. The state of New York, it's nearly impossible to get a handgun permit. But you can get one in Jersey, and it's legal in, Connecticut or Vermont. But you're a felon for traveling by car, your privately owned vehicle, through the state of New York, because you have property that's legal on both ends of your travels, but not legal in New York.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Well, theoretically, there is the right to sojourn, and it should be applied effectively in that situation.
That's right.
But it's not. And even more egregious.
You should have a free pass.
Exactly. Even more egregious, for example, is taking a long gun on a hunting trip, and you have to go through LaGuardia. Now, your gun's not registered in New York, so it's technically a felony for you to have that gun on that transfer. And there have been people arrested for taking their long gun, coming from Florida, for example, where, most long guns, there's no problem in Florida, to, say, Montana, where there's, again, not a problem to go hunt moose or elk, and both of those are
just make sure you never take a flight to New York.
Exactly. It's, your only protection is don't go there.
So, Section 7. When any territory of the sovereign states united south of north latitude 36 degrees 30 minutes shall have a population equal to the ratio of representation for one member of Congress, and the people thereof shall have formed a constitution for a republican form of government. What did I just say? Republican form of government. Where does we ever have a democracy? That was Roosevelt. He set up a socialist democracy under his corporation.
Absolutely. That's one of the big lies you were told in school. The United States has never
had nothing to do with democracy. That's those corporate people. So it shall be admitted as a sovereign state into the Confederation of States on an equal footing with the other sovereign states. Well, Nevada, which was brought in under martial law, never got that equal footing.
Exactly.
They're not a sovereign state.
The territory of Nevada still exists. We were never brought in as a sovereign state.
So, on an equal footing with the other sovereigns, and the people may, in such constitution, either prohibit or sustain the right to involuntary labor or service, and alter or amend the Constitution at their will. Well, we just have a territorial constitution.
Exactly. The territorial constitution isn't bad. So again, here we see that compromise. That same compromise, the Kansas-Nebraska compromise, the Missouri compromise, seeks to keep the several states on an equal footing with their neighbors, and clearly upholds the sovereignty of each of the several states, and to make its own law within the framework provided to them in the overarching Articles of Confederation and the constitutional document. So if a state wished to prohibit involuntary service, they could do so when they were brought into the Union. They didn't prohibit that. And if they wished not to allow it, that was also permitted.
So, Section 8. The present right of representation in Section 2, Article 1 of this Constitution shall not be altered without the consent of all the sovereign states, maintaining the right to involuntary service or labor south of latitude 36 degrees 30 minutes, but nothing in this Constitution or its amendments shall be construed to deprive any sovereign state south of said latitude 36 degrees 30 minutes of the right of abolishing involuntary servitude at its will.
So we can see here, these are lengthy, all these ones dealing with involuntary servitude. They're working really hard to try to preserve the equality between the several states and to work on this compromise. So once again, this seeks to prevent the more populous states from creating federal legislation to the detriment of the less populous. And again, preserves the right of the several states to make legislation within its own sovereign borders. The state, say Virginia, wished to abolish slavery. There's nothing allowed within the federal statutes here, within the articles within this Constitution, to prohibit from doing so. They can do it at will, with the will of the people.
So anything that comes out of these federal departments, BLM, Fish and Games, any federal department, is a corporate ruling and does not apply to constitutionality. But keep that in mind. When you're fighting the BLM about the horses and stuff, the BLM has no right to begin with. You don't even have to deal with them.
No, exactly. The BLM is one of the corporate offices.
Corporate office.
You're not.
They have no lawful right here.
Well, here we go, and it goes back to another show we did quite a while ago. I refer back to this one quite often, and it's a really good one. Go find it on YouTube. Jurisdiction. They have no jurisdiction without a contract.
That's right.
I haven't signed anything with them. Have you, Gary?
No, I don't know why everybody keeps playing this game.
Well, I do. I know, because they have guns.
We have guns too.
Yes, we do.
Section 9, the regulation and control of the right to labor or service in any of the sovereign states united south of latitude 36 degrees 30 minutes is hereby recognized to be exclusively the right of each sovereign state within its own limits, and this Constitution shall not be altered or amended to impair this right of each sovereign state without its consent, provided this article shall not be construed to dissolve the States of America United from rendering assistance to suppress insurrections or domestic violence when called upon by any sovereign state as provided in Section 4, Article 4 of this Constitution.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
And this, you were saying about guns, about we have the right to use guns. And when it comes to legality, we have the right under international law to defend our property, our territory, and our person. And these are paramilitary units. They are committing war crimes. So that's another thing. They become a war criminal. These foreign or these corporate agencies like the BLM Police Department, the Forestry Police Department. Anybody in these federal agencies are a paramilitary unit because it's a private security force. You don't have a contract with them. So under international law, it's a war crime. Just like rape is a war crime.
When committed by power that is involved in So let's talk about this for a minute. So what this again, we're talking about equalizing power between North and South.
Right.
And that 3630 is that line. And like I said, you can see that line carried across. This again cements the right of each sovereign state. And we continuously see them recognizing each state as being sovereign. Each state is its own sovereign entity to do as it wills.
Yeah, just because you was in the southern states don't mean you had to do slavery.
No.
You had the right to hire people.
You have the right to hire people. Heck, if you wanted to get a majority within your own state to abolish slavery, that's what this is talking about. It allows you to abolish it. And none of the other states have any say within your sovereign state as to how you're doing this. And it also talks here about, rendering assistance to suppress insurrection or domestic violence. But it only says within the Section 4, Article 4 of the Constitution. Can't do it any other way. Has to be legal. You can't do as the Lincoln administration did and take the armies of the northern states and impose their will upon other states in the South.
Yeah, there were states that wanted to maintain neutrality and were forced into the war.
Exactly. The entire sections of Tennessee, Kentucky, were Missouri, for that matter. Right. They wanted to maintain a neutral position, but they were forced by the federal government to take a stance.
Yeah, the Missouri militia, their guard fought a running battle for years against the federal troops until they were forced into Arkansas, and at the Battle of Pea Ridge is when the Indian nations joined them, and we defeated the foreign armies of the Union Corporation.
Right. So on to Section 10. No sovereign state shall pass any law in any way interfering with or obstructing the recovery of fugitives from justice, or from labor or service, or any law of commerce made under Article 4, Section 2 of this Constitution, and all laws in violation of the sections may, on complaint by any person or sovereign state, be declared void by the Supreme Court. Seems pretty logical here if you're all locked up and within a confederation that, somebody on the run for murder in Georgia. Tennessee can't make a law that says, no, we don't want to return any of these people to Georgia. Doesn't make any sense. You're all in one federal union.
That's right.
But we see this actually now within the federal corporate union, where certain states, Vermont, I'm looking at you, Massachusetts, I'm looking at you, don't wish to return and actually actively fight the extradition of particular criminals, particularly murderers, to states that still have the death penalty, like Texas. Well, this clarifies that really well. You can't do that. You have to return them to stand trial, legal trial, due process in the sovereign state in which the crime was committed. And actually, it localizes it down to the district where the crime was committed to have your trial. And that's a constitutional amendment prior to this. So it's pretty cut and dry. It's procedural section. But again, we're seeing clarification of all the different parts that we're wanting in the Constitution of the Articles of Confederation.
So Section 11, as a right of comity between the several sovereign states south of latitude 36 degrees, 30 minutes, the right to transit with persons held to involuntary labor or service from one sovereign state to another shall not be obstructed, but such persons shall not be bought into the sovereign states north of said latitude.
Exactly. This is again talking about that right of sojourn, to be able to move with, again, and I hate to use the term, one's property from one state, sovereign state, to another with unmolested, without, facing, the local militia or facing the local constitutional sheriff and being arrested for having your property and moving between the states. Again, pretty cut and dry. It's not, rocket science here, what they're trying to do. All they're trying to do is protect the individual's right to their person, their property, and maintain the balance between the several states.
So Section 12, the traffic in slaves of Africa is hereby forever prohibited on pain of death, and the forfeiture of all rights and property of persons engaged therein, and descendants of Africans shall not be descendants. Slavery was nearly abolished by this time around the world. But there is still slavery. Well, Africa, the Arab nations. The Arab nations are some of the biggest violators of that right now. And these poor people from the Philippines that go over and think they got a job are forced into slavery.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrible. The big soccer stadium was built over there, built primarily by slave labor.
And they take young children and they make them jockeys to ride the camels.
Mm-hmm.
And Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia.
Well, one of the other things, this is kind of a side note, the face mask issue. I don't know if anybody's been following this closely at all or not, but there's been a dramatic uptick in human trafficking and child slavery since the institution, the requirement by governments of face masks.
Good way to hide them.
Good way to hide them. Good way to hide them from facial recognition. Good way to hide them from being detected. Just saying.
Yeah, did you read the deal about the underground tunnels?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Getting the kids through there? My gosh, it's terrible. To this day we have this problem.
So cutting back to Section 12.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's good information. That's what we're here for. The goal here is to prevent the additional importation of slaves taken by Africans. That's something also glossed over in our history books. That, they think that there's the Dutch and the English and the French over there rounding up Kunta Kinte and his buddies. No. It was other African tribes.
It was tribal warfare.
It was tribal warfare, and it was normal for them. And sold into, but they're trying to prevent this. Slaves taken by Africans and sold to middlemen to make that inhumane crossing.
We had slaves among the tribal nations here.
Absolutely. And the first slaveholder in the United States was a black man.
That's right.
This would also prevent the institution of slavery from continuing because you're removing the supply. Up until this time, and even at this time, the great ships like Constellation and Constitution were involved in the African squadron, actively fighting this trafficking. So they were going to work on letting slavery die out.
Yes, it was dying out. Section 13, Alleged fugitives from labor or service on request shall have a trial by jury before being returned.
Right. So trial by jury, due process. So even within the sections describing involuntary servitude, there are direct prohibitions against bringing them back without a trial. They need to have a trial by jury to determine whether they're, actually are being held in involuntary servitude. So you couldn't just grab a guy off the streets. So this prevents issues with illegal acts and the return of fugitives. It reflects the common law core of this document. It says trial by jury. It's paramount within the common law. It is enshrined. It is one of the core concepts of common law that you are entitled, by your divine right, to a trial by a jury of your peers. Due process before any harm can come to you.
Now we're jumping on section 14. Alleged fugitives charged with a crime committed in violation of the law of a sovereign state shall have the right of trial by jury, and if such person claims to be a citizen of another sovereign state, shall have the right of appeal or the writ of error to the Supreme Court of the sovereign states united. Remember, we're independent sovereign states.
So effectively all this is doing is setting up extradition treaties between all of the sovereign states and governing the rules of extradition and all that kind of good stuff. Again, this is trying to resolve issues that existed within the original core documents because these problems were happening. So if you're a citizen of Virginia, you have the right of appeal to the Supreme Court. Make sure that everything was done legitimately and legally. And that just makes sense. That Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. Actually, it's a term referred to the basketball court that's above the Supreme Court building, the highest court in the land.
All right, so section 15. All acts of any inhabitant of the sovereign states united tending to incite persons held to service or labor to insurrection or acts of domestic violence, or to abscond, to depart secretly and hide oneself, are here prohibited and declared to be penal offense, and all the courts of the sovereign states united shall be open to suppress and punish such offenses at the suit of any citizen of the sovereign states united or the suit of any sovereign state. Would you like to make a comment on that?
Oh, I love to make comments. You know me, Gary. So what they're looking at here is they're looking at inciting riots. They're looking at inciting people to violence or to commit crime. And that in and of itself is a crime. If you incite other people to do harm, do violence, I'm looking at you, BLM, not Bureau of Land Management, but the other one. You're guilty of a crime.
Boys' lives matter?
Better looking men, I don't know, one of those groups.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Better looking men.
Yeah. Whatever it takes. But they're setting this up that, it's a crime, regardless if you're doing this especially if you're doing this across state lines. And I have to put this in a federal document because the laws of, say, Virginia don't apply, within Maryland. But they have to put it at the constitutional level because that's the only allowable federal document. All these other federal statutes and regulations and laws are invalid.
So true.
If you look back at, I believe, the 9th Amendment, it effectively prohibits all that.
Now, section 16. All conspiracies in any state to interfere with lawful rights in any other sovereign state or against the states of America united shall be suppressed, and no state or the people thereof shall withdraw from this confederation without the consent of 3/4 of all the states, expressed by amendment proposed and ratified in a manner provided in Article 5 of the Constitution.
So this is critical. This is actually very interesting. This makes it legal and not by force that you can withdraw.
That's right.
From the Confederation of States. It's not a bad thing. Actually, this is intentional.
You should have the right. We're sovereign independence. Why should we stay with it? You should have that option. And this is good because the only other state that has a direct option is this Texas Republic.
Correct. Because it was a republic before and it joined voluntarily.
That was the agreement they made with the corporation.
Exactly. They could withdraw from it at any time on their consent of their people. So this is important. There wasn't this kind of safety valve set up in the original documents. Effectively, the only way you could leave is by force. So since this was suppressed by the federal government, that's why the Confederation, well, it wasn't suppressed. They voted to leave.
Yeah, they just didn't recognize it.
Exactly. The northern states refused to recognize Section 16 here because 3/4 of the states consented.
There was more southern states than there was northern states.
Correct. So they voted to leave.
So Section 17, whenever any sovereign state wherein involuntary servitude is recognized or allowed, such propose to abolish such servitude, and shall apply for pecuniary related to money,
Legalese again.
assistance thereof, the Congress may, in its discretion, grant such relief not exceeding $100 for each person liberated. But Congress shall not propose such abolishment or relief to any state. Congress may assist free persons of African descent to immigrate and colonize Africa. That's the, what is that? Not Libya, but
Liberia.
Liberia. Yes.
With this great capital
You look at their
of
flag.
Monrovia.
They fly the flag similar to ours.
Exactly, because they were set up by James Monroe.
That's right.
So
Thomas Jefferson was involved in it.
absolutely, Jefferson and Monroe were good friends.
Yeah.
So what does this do? This sets up that the states shall say, hey, we're going to abolish slavery, but we need to, because we can't seize people's property without due process and just compensation. Hey, we need a little help providing assistance to these people I'm stagnating here, Gary. But effectively pay them off.
Well, repatriate, what do you call that?
Yeah, remunerate. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Remunerate these people for their loss. Make them whole. They can appeal to Congress, and Congress can grant them no more than $100 for each person, or each piece of property taken, each person liberated. So again, this recognizes other amendments that apply here.
And if you take that $100 now, in today's inflation rate, you're getting a pretty good little check.
Oh, absolutely. And it also sets up that Congress may assist, not will assist, but may assist.
It's an option. Yes.
Free persons of African descent to go back. These people that were taken from Africa, stolen by their, by a neighboring tribe and sold to the Dutch or the English, to go back. It's designed to be fair, to be equitable.
And this is still in effect, by the way.
Absolutely, but you're going to have to petition Congress. We don't have them.
Yeah, we don't have our government. That's the problem. Yes. So, well, you know what? You might be able to go back to the International Court, though. Section 18, duties on imports may be imposed for revenue, but shall not be excessive or prohibitory in amount.
So here we go. We have found the cause and the solution to the war between the states.
That's right.
Directly reflects the brewing issue that caused the War of Northern Aggression, the overtaxation, the tariffs on exports that the southern states relied upon, cotton, tobacco, etc. These items were taxed at a rate that was punitive because the northern states didn't care. They were getting the benefit.
Remember, we had a rebellion because of the tea tax.
Well, we had a rebellion on the tea tax, we had a whiskey tax,
Yeah.
All these things.
Nobody rebels now.
Here's the thing. We rebelled over a 3% tax. 3% tax on paper and tea. I'd love a 3% tax at this point, guys. Come on now.
There's over 100 taxes on a loaf of bread. So start to finish.
Exactly. So we're going to try to push through here.
Section 19. When all the sovereign states shall have abolished slavery, then and thereafter, slavery or involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, shall never be established or tolerated in any of the sovereign states or territories of the states of America United, and they shall be free forever.
So here we go. We see the end game. We see the plan. And there's a plan to let slavery die out of its own accord. There's this wonderful thing called mechanization takes over. And it would have caused over time without the need for a government to unlawfully take property without remuneration. A machine, a cotton gin, a combine, a harvester doesn't need sleep. It doesn't need to be housed, doesn't need to be fed. It's never going to go on strike. It's not going to ever take a sick day. It works without complaint and does exactly what it's told without fail.
Just think how long it took to get those cotton combines up.
But true, it did. It took a long time. But again, if you're allowing for this thing to die out.
But, and it's just during the Depression, people got to remember, it wasn't just blacks picking cotton.
It was the sharecroppers.
Everybody was picking cotton during those Depression years.
Well, heck, you listen to Merle Haggard in the Bakersfield Sound, he talks about his parents picking cotton in Tulare, California. And himself picking cotton in Tulare.
Yeah.
So, once involuntary servitude had died out, it could never come back. So they're working on making this whole thing happen without this giant, massive convulsion of violence and murder.
And look how long it took to take the bounty of Indian scalps in California.
Oh, absolutely.
In the 1900s, finally they took the bounty off. But in Mexico, they still had the bounty.
Yep, so they would kill them here and bring them there.
So eventually took a while, it just took longer than normal. Section 20, provisions in this article relating to involuntary labor or servitude shall not be altered without the consent of all the sovereign states, without all the sovereign states maintain such servitude.
So again, we're looking here at balancing out those northern states and the southern states. The northern states couldn't all of a sudden get together and say, hey, we're going to, alter these sections. They can't do that. You can't change the law in any of the sovereign states without their consent. And that's where this is the last section. This all governs this whole document.
So pay close attention to what I'm going to read here. We are subjecting ourselves to voluntary slavery via our consent to contracts prededicated on the Corporate Constitution's 14th and 15th Amendments and now authorized by the Corporate Union Commercial Codes, the UCC, adopted in every corporate franchise state, and from our lack of defining and defending our sovereign state national status. This is a dishonor to our foremothers and forefathers. So, you didn't know you signed a contract, or you had a contract on this. So that makes it null and void. Lack of full disclosure.
Absolutely. And if they come with guns and tell you have a contract or to sign a contract,
no.
Contracts signed under duress are not valid.
So this amendment added a heavy penalty not included in the original exclusion of titles of nobility provided in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. Cease to be a citizen of a sovereign state united and incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them, the amendment was never repealed.
Exactly. This is still in force.
That's right.
And we can see the government dominated by lawyers and individuals that desire wealth and power over the freedom of their fellow man. And they would do everything possible to erase this from history, to bury it.
And so what do we see? We see esquires, nobility. We see the Bar Association of Union. And what does BAR stand for? British Accreditation Registry. They tied ourselves right into the crown.
So we continue to see the Civil Rights Act, the tax laws, all corporate rules, a corporate mission statement that actually being modified by all their new unlawful amendments and not in the original organic Constitution. This is how it appears that the Executive Corporate Congress has unlawfully repealed several constitutional amendments without convening a constitutional convention. All laws, codes, statutes, including the admittance of the corporate states after March 27, 1861. Now, this includes all the treaties with the Native Americans, the Native Nations. After that point, they're all unlawful. There's no lawful government as defined by the Articles of Confederation.
Actually, they made it official in the Indian Act of 1871. That's when they made it official that all treaties were wiped out and became contracts signed by the CEO of the corporation.
Yep. And look how all those came out.
Yeah.
So we have foreign corporate military, mercenaries, paid by the Crown's paymaster within the District of Columbia, a foreign enclave, ruled over jointly by the English Crown and the Vatican. It's been a planned illusion from the beginning. The original organic Constitution The original Articles of Confederation remains intact and valid. It is the law of the land. You just have to blow the dust off it and find men and women with backbone enough to follow it. And every 4 years, the U.S. Printing Office reprints the Organic Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, the Declaration of Independence, the Northwestern Territorial Treaty. The 4 documents that are the Articles of Freedom, the laws of the land, for we, the people. Now, you can get a good copy of this. What was that copy you used, Gary? That little book you have?
Oh, I didn't bring it in with me.
That's all right.
It's a common law version of it. What it does, it breaks down under common law every your Bill of Rights. It defines them under common law, because that's where all our law comes from, is common law.
Exactly. So, what's happened? Throughout the years, Americans get too busy. Didn't notice what was happening. It's like boiling a frog thing. They place too much trust in their so-called elected representatives in the public school system. The best 3 distractions that the corporate government discovered were fear, debt, and war. We have not had a year of peace since the Lincoln administration. These traitors don't do anything in a hurry because time is always on their side. They hold power. They hold the reins of power.
So during all these distractions, the private foreign corporation, United States of America, the United States of America, the United States of America Incorporated, and the United States Corporation were formed to convert the federal government into a private business for profit, using America's labor and industry as if they own us on the global markets. Now, one of those corporations was the Vatican, by the way.
Yes, it was. Now, all those, if you watch our show, if you've listened to us, and remember, those are all the different terms that were used in the bankruptcy documents. Those were all the corporations that went bankrupt.
So anytime you see United States, they're talking of a corporation. They're not talking of a sovereign republic here. They're talking of a private, for-profit corporation. So all present American federal and state corporate governments, all courts and agencies, now you can know they're a corporation when you see it all in capital letters, are unconstitutional private for-profit foreign corporations. You can go on Dun and Bradstreet and find this out. These corporations are absolutely no authority or judicial power over the sovereign American Republic states on the land. There's a difference, on the land or on the sea or on the air. Our rights are guaranteed on the land without a written contract with you. Supreme Court Bond versus United States, 529 U.S. 334. It was done in 2000. The government-controlled media swept it neatly under the carpet, just like the truth about COVID-19. No, there is no body of law that can reverse the U.S. Supreme Court. Read the Articles of Freedom. We the people are the sovereigns of the states of America, united within a confederation.
Absolutely. We can't handhold you through all this.
That's right.
You have to do your homework, just like you had to do in those corporate schools. We're asking you to go do your homework now. Go do your homework. Look up what we've talked about. If we're wrong, comment on the YouTube. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong. I'd love to learn from you.
Go. Amazon, a lot of people don't like Amazon, but right now, if you got one of their cards, you get points and everything else. They got their own Prime deal. But they're a good source, a library, for all the books you need to read. Or you can go to YouTube and watch videos. But if you go to Amazon and look at books, look up the Black's Law Dictionary. The 6th edition is a good one to get. 6th edition. There's, I think, up to 9 now.
Yep.
And there's some other ones. Under common law, there's a lot of good books under common law. But I suggest, since you're getting the Black's Law Dictionary, to get the common law primer. That breaks down the definition for common law wording.
Correct.
So you should have both books. And then get something about the common law. Start reading about the common law. Read about admiralty law. Read about international law. You'll be amazed. Remember, international law we've been under since the beginning of this country. So you should learn it.
Exactly. The international law is the highest law you can deal with right now.
That's right.
Yeah, the International Criminal Court is out there, and it's out there to protect you. So I think we've covered a lot of good ground tonight, Gary.
And if you want to go to a good website, it's www.bare, B-A-R-E, foots, F-O-O-T-S, World, WORLD.org. Barefootsworld.org.
A lot of the material we cover comes
a lot of good information out there, and you can download almost everything there. He was, I believe, an Army veteran that passed away. His son keeps the site up. Very good site. I highly recommend it. And there's other good sites out there. So start learning, educating us. Watch YouTube videos of birth certificate bonds, treasurydirect.gov, anything you can find about that, the treasury accounts, the Social Security accounts. They're not what you think they are. These are separate accounts.
No, they're not. They're definitely separate accounts.
Separate accounts that you have money in. Wait, and when you do the bond, treasurydirect.gov with the bond, get your birth certificate, and you can figure it out on the calculation chart. Just play with it by putting in your birth certificate file number and the month and year you was born, and you can start going through there and calculate it and see how much you got in birth certificate bonds. And birth certificate bonds are said that, or they're called a bond because the paper it's on is bond paper. It's traded on the open commodities market. You're a commodity if you're a U.S. citizen.
Absolutely. If your name is all in caps,
you're a commodity.
You're a commodity. So I think that's good enough content for tonight. I think we will be giving you enough to chew on for a while. And we'll be back. We'll be back again with the Keeping the Republic Just show. And we're going to continue putting these out on YouTube. I'll be putting them out on, announcing when they get posted on Twitter. And hopefully soon enough we'll have them on Facebook again.
And if you want to know more about the Nevada Republic and its common law private membership and its common law courts of justice, you can write to it. Just put Nevada Republic to 50 Emery Street, E-M-E-R-Y Street, Suite 500, Pahrump, that's P-A-H-R-U-M-P, Pahrump, Nevada, spell it out, N-E-V-A-D-A. And if you want to put the zip, it's 89048, but that's a federal corporate code, so we don't use it, but it will get to you regardless. So write to us. We'll include your name, your phone number, your email, or any way you want us to get in contact with you, how you're set up on Facebook so we can friend you on Facebook. Or look us up on Nevada Republic on Facebook. Look up the Nevada Republic Common Law Private Membership Association. Look us up. We're out there. We're happy to talk with you.
We're here to educate. We're here to help. So I'm Michael Runion. This is my co-teacher,
Gary Bergman.
Signing off for right now. Remember, Chucky Allah, our day will come. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much for joining us.